Freezing rain turns the street to glass. Inside the bus terminal, heat clings to wet coats and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights buzz, shoes squeak. A dead security camera stares at nothing. Officer_EC, calm, focused male officer, early 30s, medium athletic build, defined jawline, short textured dark hair, light stubble, slightly tired eyes, natural skin texture with pores, tactical police uniform with subtle wear marks, grounded realistic expression, stands where he can see 3 exits without looking like he is. K9_Shadow, black and tan German Shepherd, black saddle pattern, black facial mask, golden tan fur, upright alert ears, amber eyes, small notch on left ear, muscular structure, realistic fur texture, tactical K9 harness. Sits still. A child comes in and doesn't move like a child. She watches exits. She doesn't ask for a seat. She asks to stand. Shadow's ears shift once. The leash tightens without anyone pulling. Freezing rain turned the city into a mirror. Not the pretty kind, no soft glow, no cinematic shimmer. Just a hard, wet shine that made the concrete look like it had been varnished by something impatient. The wind shoved needles of water under collars and into cuffs. People moved fast, shoulders tight, eyes down, trying to get where they were going without becoming part of someone else's problem. Inside the downtown bus terminal, it was warmer and worse. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired insects. The air smelled like wet wool, burnt coffee, and the faint chemical bite of floor cleaner losing a long battle. Shoes squeaked on tile, wheels clicked. Loudspeaker announcements blurred into a steady, indifferent stream. Officer Ethan Cole stood near the far wall beneath a dead security camera, positioned where he could see 3 exits without looking like he was trying. He didn't wear the look of a man searching for trouble. That was never his style. He wore stillness, disciplined, deliberate, the kind that made chaos slide past him like water around a stone. Both hands rested near his belt, not gripping, not tense. His attention moved in slow sweeps. Doorways, reflections, hands, the little unnatural angles that told you when a situation was about to break. Beside him sat Shadow. K9 Shadow didn't fidget, didn't pace. He was a black and tan German Shepherd built like a promise, muscle under real fur, upright ears, amber eyes that caught motion before it became action. His tactical harness lay snug across his chest. He held still in a way that wasn't laziness, but readiness. Ethan didn't have to give commands most of the time. Shadow read him the way some people read weather, the pressure shifts, the temperature changes, the things you couldn't explain but could feel in your teeth. Ethan had been posted here for 3 hours. 2 intoxicated disturbances. 1 runaway teenager found crying in a restroom stall. A man with a knife that turned out to be a cheap box cutter and more fear than intent. Nothing headline-worthy. Everything dangerous in the way small things could become big things when people weren't paying attention. Ethan paid attention. That was why Captain Maria Hayes trusted him with the terminals and the midnight calls and the places where the city's problems gathered like spilled sugar. The terminal doors hissed open again. Cold air rolled inside. A line of passengers pushed through in a surge of damp coats and irritated faces. And then Ethan saw her. Not because she made noise, because she didn't. A child, small, maybe 9, entered with a hood too big and a backpack that looked older than she was. She stepped carefully. Not the bouncing carelessness of a kid excited about travel. Her gait was wrong, measured, uneven, as if one side of her body was negotiating with pain at every step. She paused just inside the doors, letting the crowd flow around her. That alone was a red flag. Children didn't usually choose to become invisible unless invisibility had kept them safe. Ethan didn't move. He watched. The girl scanned the terminal the way a hunted animal did. Quick looks, no lingering, measuring where danger might come from. Her shoulders were tight. Her chin tucked. She took 3 steps, stopped. 3 more, stopped again. Like she was rationing motion. She approached a row of molded plastic seats. A businessman with a rolling case slid his feet closer together without looking at her. A woman with earbuds glanced up, saw her, and immediately looked away like she'd been asked to witness something inconvenient. The girl hovered near the end of the row. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. The businessman shook his head before she even spoke, a reflex no delivered without words. The woman turned her body slightly, closing the space with her coat. The girl nodded once, as if she'd expected it, as if she was practicing being okay with rejection. Ethan felt something shift inside him, not anger, not yet, something colder, a sharpened focus. Shadow's ears adjusted, tracking the child, his gaze lifted, following her path. The girl moved deeper into the terminal, past the vending machines, past the cheap coffee stand. She approached another cluster of seats, an older couple with matching travel pillows and a shopping bag on the floor. The woman's eyes narrowed. Not cruelty, something more common, discomfort, the kind that made people protect their comfort like it was survival. The woman leaned closer to her husband, and he moved the bag farther under his legs. The girl didn't even ask this time. She just stopped, saw the calculation in their faces, and backed away. Her backpack strap slid off one shoulder. She caught it fast, fingers white on the fabric. Ethan noticed the detail, filed it away, motor control tight, like she was trying to hold her body together. She limped toward the far wall, the wall Ethan stood near, not directly to him at first. She drifted, like she was testing the air, like she was deciding if he was a safe object or another obstacle. Shadow stayed seated, but his posture changed by a fraction. Not aggressive, simply aligned. Ready. The girl stopped about 6 feet away. She looked at Ethan's uniform, at the badge, at Shadow's harness. Her eyes flicked to Shadow's face and then away, like looking too long might trigger something bad. Ethan kept his expression neutral, soft, without being fake. He'd learned the hard way that overkindness could feel like a trap to someone who had been cornered by it before. The girl swallowed. Her voice, when it came, was small enough that the terminal almost ate it. Can I stand here?" It wasn't even sit. It was permission to exist without being pushed. Ethan felt the weight of how carefully she'd chosen the request. He nodded once, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah," he said, "you can stand here." The girl froze for half a beat, waiting for the yes to be revoked. Then she took one slow step closer, and her foot caught on nothing. A tiny misstep. A shift in balance too fast for her body to correct. She pitched forward. Ethan moved. Not dramatic. Not lunging. Just a clean, controlled step that put him where he needed to be before she hit the floor. One hand braced her upper arm, the other steadied her elbow, firm enough to hold, gentle enough not to hurt. Up close he saw it, not just the limp. A prosthetic below the knee, improperly fitted, the alignment off, the socket edges pressing through fabric like sharp geometry. Her leg wasn't just injured. It was fighting equipment that didn't match her body. The girl's breath hitched. Embarrassment flushed her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, like apologizing was a reflex. Ethan shook his head once. Small. Nothing to be sorry for. Shadow rose smoothly and stepped closer, not crowding, not looming. He angled his body between the girl and the terminal, a living wall that didn't touch her but made the world feel less open and predatory. The girl's eyes widened at Shadow's movement. Shadow lowered his head slightly, a calming gesture. His ears stayed up. His gaze stayed soft. Ethan felt his own pulse settle. Shadow was doing what Shadow did best, regulating a room without asking permission. "You okay?" Ethan asked. The girl nodded too fast. "Yeah, I'm fine." But she wasn't. Ethan could see the strain in her jaw, the way she held her breath like pain was something she didn't want anyone to hear. He stepped back half a pace to give her space. Space mattered. Space meant you weren't trying to own her fear. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice low enough that it didn't become a performance. The girl hesitated, eyes darting to the nearest exit. "Lena," she said finally. "Lena Harper." Ethan nodded as if he'd just been introduced to a new neighbor. "I'm Officer Cole. This is Shadow." Shadow sat again, close to Ethan's boot, eyes still on Lena. The dog's calm was so steady it felt deliberate, like a promise made without words. Lena's gaze flicked to Shadow again, longer this time. "He's big," she whispered. Ethan's mouth twitched at the edge of a smile. "He is, but he's polite." Shadow's tail made one slow sweep against the tile, a quiet confirmation. Lena's shoulders dropped by a millimeter, not much. But Ethan noticed. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. The question was a test, phrased like an assumption. It gave her an easy out if she needed one. Lena's fingers curled around her backpack strap. "No." Ethan didn't press immediately. People broke when you pressed too soon. He watched her hands, watched her breathing, watched how she kept her body angled as if she might run. "Okay," he said simply. "Do you need anything? Water? A seat?" At the word seat, Lena flinched like she didn't deserve one. She shook her head. "I'm fine." Ethan waited. Silence could be an invitation if you didn't fill it with your need to fix. Lena's eyes moved across the terminal again, searching. Not for a friend, for a threat. Ethan followed her gaze subtly. A man near the vending machines, hoodie up, pretending to scroll on his phone. Another near the ticket kiosk, watching the doors too carefully. Normal terminal behavior, maybe. Or maybe not. Ethan didn't invent danger. He verified. But he didn't ignore patterns either. Shadow's ears flicked toward the vending machines. Ethan noticed that, too. A soft buzz in his pocket, his phone vibrating. Captain Maria Hayes. Ethan didn't look away from Lena when he answered, keeping his tone even. "Cole." Hayes' voice came through calm and pragmatic, but he could hear the tightness beneath it. The kind that meant she'd already seen something in a report that didn't sit right. "Status check," Hayes said. "Anything moving?" Ethan kept his eyes on the terminal while he spoke. "Possible child welfare situation. I'm assessing. I'll update." A pause. "Copy," Hayes said, and her tone sharpened into focus. "You need resources?" Ethan looked at Lena, at the too big hoodie, the careful silence, the unnatural limp. "Yes," he said. "Send Reed." "On it," Hayes replied. "And Cole, keep it clean. Always." Ethan ended the call. Lena watched him like the phone itself was dangerous. "You calling?" "My aunt?" she asked, voice thin. There it was, the word that carried weight like a rock. Ethan kept his face neutral, but something inside him hardened. "I'm not calling anyone you don't want me to," he said. "Who's your aunt?" Lena swallowed. "Carol." Ethan nodded as if Carol was just another adult in a child's life, not a possible threat. "Where is she right now?" Lena's eyes flicked to the doors again. "At home," she said, her voice flattened. "She doesn't like when I'm gone." Shadow's posture tightened by a fraction, not protective like a threat. Recognizing, like a dog hearing the wrong word in the wrong tone. Ethan lowered himself slightly, bending at the knees, not kneeling, not towering. He matched her level without pretending to be a peer. "You're not in trouble for talking," he said softly. "You hear me?" Lena's fingers shook on the strap. "She'll be mad." "Okay," Ethan said. "If she's mad, that's her emotion, not your responsibility." Lena stared at him, like she'd never heard an adult separate blame from a child before. Ethan continued, steady. "Do you feel safe going back to her?" The question was direct, clean. It didn't lead her to an answer. Lena opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She blinked hard. "No," she whispered. Ethan felt the terminal around them keep moving. Announcements, footsteps, life continuing like this moment didn't matter, like children didn't disappear inside ordinary places every day. He kept his voice low. "Thank you for telling me." Lena's sleeve slid slightly as she shifted her backpack again. And Ethan saw the bruises. Not one, not accidental. A cluster of fading yellow, sickly green, newer purple, finger-shaped pressure marks along the inside of her forearm. Ethan didn't react, not with his face, not with his voice. Inside, something went very still. Years of training taught you that rage was loud and useless. Rage made you sloppy. Rage made you miss what mattered. Ethan needed clarity. Shadow saw the bruises, too, not with understanding of color, but with understanding of Lena's fear. The dog stepped closer, placing his body beside her leg again, warm and steady, without touching. Lena's breath started to tremble. I didn't mean," she began, as if she'd done something wrong by being hurt. Ethan cut it off gently. "You don't have to explain anything right now." A friendly voice cut through the noise. "Officer Cole!" Deputy Lucas Reed approached from the far end of the terminal, moving fast but not panicked. Lucas had that rare gift of being energetic without being chaotic. He wore the uniform like he'd earned it, but his face carried openness that disarmed people before they realized it. He slowed as he reached Ethan and immediately clocked the situation. Child limp, fear, Shadow's positioning. Lucas' voice softened. "Hey," he said to Lena, smiling like it didn't cost him anything. "I'm Lucas. That's a really cool backpack." It wasn't a lie. It was an entry point. Lena looked at him, uncertain. It's, old, she said. Lucas shrugged, casual. Old means it's been places. That's respectable. Lena's mouth twitched like it almost remembered how to smile. Ethan kept his eyes on her. Lucas, Ethan said quietly, we're going to do this by the book. Lucas's grin faded into professional focus. Got it, Ethan turned back to Lena. Lena, he said, I want to help you, but to do that, I need you to stay with us for a little while. We're not taking you anywhere scary. We're just moving you somewhere quieter so you can breathe, okay? Lena's gaze flicked to Shadow. Shadow looked back, steady, not pleading, not demanding, just present. Lena swallowed. Okay, she whispered. Ethan nodded once. Good. He looked to Lucas. Call Captain Hayes. Tell her we need Dr. Moore on consult and a medical intake. Quiet. Lucas already had his phone out. Ethan kept his posture calm as he guided them toward a quieter corner near the security office, public enough to deter a confrontation, controlled enough to keep Lena from being swallowed by the crowd. As they moved, Ethan's eyes swept the terminal again. The man near the vending machines looked up. Too fast, too sharp. Ethan didn't stare. He didn't escalate. He simply adjusted position so that if someone tried to close distance, they'd have to go through him first. Shadow walked close to Lena's prosthetic side, matching her pace with instinctive precision. Each time her step faltered, Shadow slowed. Lena's hand drifted toward Shadow's fur like it wanted permission. Shadow stayed steady. Ethan watched that hand hover, trembling. Then Lena's fingers made contact, just a light touch against Shadow's shoulder. And for the first time since she'd walked in, Lena's breathing eased. Not because the terminal was safer, because something loyal had chosen her anyway. The security office wasn't a sanctuary. It was a small room with a desk, a bulletin board full of laminated "See Something, Say Something" posters, and a tired space heater that clicked like it was considering quitting. But it had two things Ethan needed: visibility and control. A glass window faced the terminal floor. Anyone looking in could see that a uniformed officer was with the child. That mattered. Predators preferred shadows. Ethan positioned Lena in the corner seat nearest the wall, not trapped, not boxed in, but with her back protected. He sat at an angle that let him see the doorway and the window at the same time. Lucas stood near the door, posture loose, eyes sharp. Shadow settled beside Lena's prosthetic side, close enough to warm the air around her leg. Lena's fingers stayed in Shadow's fur like she was afraid the dog might vanish if she let go. Ethan spoke quietly, careful with every syllable. "You're doing good," he said. "You're not in trouble. You're not being arrested. You're safe right now." Lena nodded without looking up. Her gaze stayed on the floor tiles as if eye contact was a kind of risk. Lucas's phone buzzed. He stepped a half pace away and spoke in a low voice. "Captain?" "Yeah, we've got her. Ethan wants Dr. Moore consult and medical intake. Also, there's a prior report. We need it pulled." He listened, then glanced at Ethan. His eyes tightened with the message he was hearing. "Copy. We'll keep it clean." Lucas ended the call and leaned closer, speaking so Lena wouldn't catch more than tone. "Hayes is on it. She's looping Moore and pulling whatever history exists. She said to hold position until we can move." Ethan nodded once. "Good." He turned back to Lena. "This part mattered. How you asked, how you didn't." "Lena," he said, "I'm going to ask you a few questions. You can say stop at any time. You can say I don't know. You can say I don't want to answer. None of those answers get you in trouble. Okay?" Lena's shoulders rose and fell in a shallow breath. "Okay." Ethan kept his voice neutral. "How did you get here today?" Lena swallowed. "I walked," she said. From home." That was not a normal distance for a limping child in freezing rain. Ethan didn't say that. He just nodded. "Did anyone bring you?" "No." "Did anyone follow you?" Lena's head snapped up slightly at that. "I don't know," she whispered. Shadow lifted his head, ears flicking, not alarmed, listening. Ethan leaned back a fraction, giving her space again. "Okay," he said. "We'll assume someone might be looking. That means we're going to keep you with us." Lena's mouth trembled like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Arguing with adults had probably never been safe. Ethan took the next step carefully. "Do you have a phone?" Lena shook her head. "Does your aunt have one?" Lena nodded. She calls, well, people. What kind of people? Lena hesitated. Her fingers tightened in Shadow's fur. I don't know, she said, then quieter. She gets mad if I listen. Ethan nodded once, okay? He didn't need names, not yet. He needed structure. He pointed gently to her prosthetic, careful not to touch. Does that hurt right now? Lena's jaw tightened. Always, she said. Ethan let that sit. Is it supposed to hurt always? Lena's eyes flicked up to his face, confused by the question. I don't know, she said. Aunt Carol says I need to stop complaining. Ethan didn't ask about the bruises yet. He didn't want Lena to feel like her pain was the only thing adults cared about. He wanted her to feel like her whole self mattered. What were you hoping would happen when you came here? He asked. Lena stared at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. I needed to sit, she whispered. My leg, and she was yelling, and Her voice caught. She swallowed hard. I thought maybe if I was in public, she wouldn't... She didn't finish the sentence. Ethan didn't make her. He nodded slowly. That's smart, he said. It takes courage to do that. Lena flinched at the word courage, like it didn't apply to someone like her. Lucas shifted at the doorway. Ethan caught his eye and gave a small signal. Watch the terminal. Lucas nodded, then looked out through the window, scanning the crowd. Ethan's phone buzzed. He answered without breaking his calm tone. Cole? Dr. Lena Moore's voice came through, measured, thoughtful, with that clinical steadiness that felt like a hand on your shoulder without touching you. Ethan, she said, Hayes briefed me. I'm going to keep this simple. You need 2 things, visible indicators documented and a medically neutral intake. Don't press her for a full narrative. Let the facts arrive in pieces. Can you keep her in a controlled environment until transport? Yes, Ethan said. Good. Also, Moore added, and he heard the sharpened edge beneath her calm. Tell Hayes to pull the prior report and every associated attachment. These situations are often closed without being resolved. Ethan's eyes flicked to Lena's bruises again. Understood, Moore continued, tone practical. When you move her, avoid making it feel like an arrest. Keep it framed as care, warmth, safety, choices, and if you can, keep the dog close. Her body is already responding to him. Ethan glanced at Shadow. The dog's presence was a quiet anchor. Copy. He ended the call. Lucas turned from the window. 2 men in the terminal, he said quietly, eyes narrowed. 1 near vending machines, 1 by kiosk, both watching. Might be nothing, might be something. Ethan didn't look at the men directly. He didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they'd been detected. Stay calm, Ethan said. We move when Hayes confirms transport. Lena heard the shift anyway. Her breathing tightened. Are they here for me? She whispered. Ethan leaned slightly toward her, voice low. I don't know, he said honestly, but I'm not letting anyone take you. Lena's eyes widened. Shadow's head lifted, gaze fixed on the door. He didn't growl. He didn't need to. His stillness was a warning in itself. Minutes stretched. The terminal outside continued its ordinary chaos, unaware that something dangerous was trying to slip into the cracks. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Captain Maria Hayes. He answered. Cole. Hayes didn't waste words. Prior report exists, she said. Closed 3 months ago. Minimal documentation. No photos. No medical verification. It's the kind of thing that gets rubber-stamped when everyone's overloaded. Ethan's jaw tightened. Who filed it? Not saying over the phone, Hayes replied. But it's local. It's sloppy. And it's going to push her right back to the Guardian if we don't rebuild it properly. Ethan's voice stayed even. We're rebuilding, Hayes continued. I've got a quiet transport en route. And Ethan, do not engage anyone in that terminal unless you have to. Keep her out of view. We'll route through staff corridors. Understood. Hayes' voice softened by a fraction. You're doing the right thing. Ethan ended the call. He turned to Lucas. We move in 5, he said. Staff corridor route. Lucas nodded. He shifted his stance, ready. Ethan looked to Lena. Okay, he said gently. We're going to go somewhere warm and quiet where a doctor can look at your leg and make sure you're okay. You're not in trouble. You're not going back with anyone today. You're staying with us. Lena's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She'll be mad, she whispered. Ethan didn't dismiss it. He didn't lie. She might, he said. "But she doesn't get to hurt you because she's mad." Lena stared at him, like the idea itself was unreal. Ethan stood slowly so he didn't startle her. He offered his hand, not as a command, as an option. "Do you want to hold my hand?" he asked. "Or do you want Shadow close and you walk beside me?" Lena's eyes flicked between Ethan's hand and Shadow. She chose Shadow. "I want him," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Okay." Shadow rose smoothly, stepping close enough that his shoulder brushed Lena's leg. He moved at her pace, perfectly matched. Lucas opened the door a crack and checked the hall. Clear. Ethan guided Lena out, keeping his body between her and the terminal floor. They moved through a narrow corridor behind the security office where the noise dropped into a dull hum. Fluorescent lights flickered. The smell changed. Less coffee, more stale paper and metal. Lena limped faster than her leg wanted to allow, driven by fear. Shadow adjusted instantly, slowing her with gentle body positioning, like a moving handrail. Ethan watched her carefully. "You're okay," he said. "Slow is fine." They reached a service exit where a plain transport vehicle waited. No flashing lights, no drama. A uniformed driver nodded once. Professional. Quiet. Ethan helped Lena up the step. She winced, biting back a sound. Shadow jumped in after her, settling close. Lucas climbed in last, scanning the street. As the door shut, Ethan caught one last glimpse through the tinted window. The man near the vending machines had moved closer to the corridor entrance. Too late. His posture was tense, his head turning like he was searching for the thing that had slipped away. Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't relax. He just watched until the vehicle pulled away and the terminal fell behind them like a cold dream. The next phase wasn't heroic. It was procedural, and it was where most rescues failed. The vehicle moved through wet streets toward a medical intake that Captain Hayes had arranged quietly. No loud entrances, no spectacle, just a plan that could survive scrutiny. Lena sat with her hands in her lap, fingers interlaced so tightly her knuckles looked pale. Shadow pressed his body along the seat beside her, warm and steady. His breathing was slow on purpose. Dogs could teach humans how to breathe again. Ethan sat across from her, posture relaxed, eyes never fully leaving her. Lucas sat near the door, tracking their route, listening. Lena spoke suddenly, voice small. Is she going to find me?" Ethan answered carefully. "She might try," he said, "but she doesn't get to decide what happens now." Lena's eyes filled. She said if I made trouble, people would send me away," Lena whispered. "That nobody wants a broken kid." The words landed like a bruise on Ethan's chest. He kept his face calm, but his voice went softer. "That's not true," he said. "And I'm going to prove it." Lena's gaze flicked to him, searching for the trap. There wasn't one. The vehicle slowed as they pulled into a side entrance of a clinic attached to a hospital. The building was plain, clean, quiet, the kind of place that handled difficult truths without fanfare. A staff member met them at the door and guided them into a small exam room. Ethan stayed with Lena. Lucas stayed outside the door, acting like a casual guard. Shadow lay down immediately at Lena's feet, head up, ears tracking. The room smelled like antiseptic and paper. Lena's breathing tightened again. Ethan didn't rush her. He sat in the chair beside the exam table and spoke quietly. "You're allowed to be scared," he said, "but you're not alone." Lena swallowed hard. "Well, what if they make me go back?" she whispered. Ethan's eyes didn't blink. "Not without a fight," he said. The door opened. Dr. Lena Moore stepped in. She didn't wear a white coat that felt like authority. She wore scrubs and a cardigan, practical, human. Her eyes were sharp but warm. She took in Lena's posture, the prosthetic alignment, the bruising visible at the sleeve edge. And then she did something important. She asked permission. "Hi, Lena," Dr. Moore said softly. "My name is Dr. Moore. I help people figure out what their bodies are trying to tell them. Is it okay if I sit down and talk to you for a minute?" Lena hesitated, then nodded once. Dr. Moore sat on a rolling stool, careful to stay at Lena's level. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "I'm going to ask a few questions," she said. "You can tell me if anything hurts, and if you need a break, we take a break." Lena nodded again, a tiny motion. Dr. Moore glanced at Ethan, then back to Lena. "And your dog friend can stay," she added. "He seems very good at his job." Shadow's tail made one slow sweep. Lena's fingers went into Shadow's fur again, like she was holding on to a truth she could feel. Dr. Moore began gently, describing everything she was doing before she did it. No surprises, no sharp movements, just steady procedure. Ethan watched Lena's face as Dr. Moore examined the prosthetic area. The wince that came before touch, the way Lena held her breath like pain, had become a normal tax she paid for existing. Dr. Moore's expression stayed professional, but Ethan saw the tension behind her eyes. The prosthetic was wrong. The bruises were wrong. Everything about Lena's body said harm had been normalized. Doctor Moore noted details quietly, methodically. Measurements, observations, the clinical language that courts respected. And Ethan realized something important. This wasn't just about saving Lena today. This was about making sure no one could legally hand her back tomorrow. Dr. Lena Moore didn't rush. She treated time like a tool, something you used deliberately, not something that happened to you. She finished checking the prosthetic interface first, then the bruising, then the way Lena unconsciously guarded her left side, even when no one was touching it. The whole exam was quiet, but it wasn't gentle in the sentimental way people expected. It was gentle in the way competence can be gentle. When Dr. Moore finally leaned back, she kept her voice calm for Lena's sake, but her eyes met Ethan's with a different message. This is real. This is ongoing. This is not a misunderstanding. Lena, Dr. Moore said, I'm going to write down what I see so people can't pretend it isn't there. That's my job. Does that make sense? Lena's hands tightened in Shadow's fur. Will I get in trouble? Dr. Moore shook her head, slow. No, you're not in trouble. You're the one who needed help. Lena stared at her, processing the concept like a foreign language. Ethan watched her face shift, fear still present, but now with a thin thread of something else. Permission. Dr. Moore continued, careful with phrasing. Can you tell me, only if you want to, how your leg got hurt? Lena's eyes dropped to the floor. The room went still. Even Shadow seemed to reduce his breathing, like he was making space for her words. Lena's voice came out small. She said, it was my fault, she whispered, that I shouldn't have been behind the car. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't need to. Lena swallowed. She told the police I ran out, Lena said. Her voice cracked. I didn't? Dr. Moore didn't lean in, didn't pounce on the confession. She stayed exactly where she was, giving Lena control. Thank you, Dr. Moore said softly. That's important. Lena's shoulders trembled once, then stilled again, as if her body had tried to cry and remembered it wasn't allowed. Ethan felt that old, controlled anger press against his ribs. He kept it caged, because cages were useful when you needed precision. Dr. Moore asked one more question, neutral and careful. Is the person who did this waiting for you somewhere today? Lena nodded once. At home. Ethan's jaw tightened. Dr. Moore wrote, not drama, just ink, just facts. Facts were weapons in a world that pretended truth didn't exist unless it was formatted correctly. She finished and looked at Ethan. I'm going to hand this to Captain Hayes, she said, still in that calm tone. This documentation supports an emergency protective action. It also indicates prolonged harm. Ethan nodded. Thank you. Dr. Moore stood and addressed Lena again. I'm going to step out for a minute, she said. Shadow stays. Officer Cole stays. You're safe. Lena nodded, eyes shiny but dry. When the door closed, Ethan waited. He didn't fill the room with reassurance. He let it breathe. After a long moment, Lena spoke without looking up. Do you have kids? Ethan's chest tightened. No, he said simply. Lena's voice went smaller. Why are you helping me then? There it was, the question that made this moment heavier than any badge or rule book. Ethan didn't answer with a speech. He answered with the truth that fit inside the room. Because you asked, he said. And because you shouldn't have had to ask more than once. Lena's fingers tightened around Shadow's fur again, as if she needed to make sure something solid still existed. Shadow shifted his chin closer to her knee and stayed there, warm and steady. The door opened again. Captain Maria Hayes entered like she carried both empathy and authority in the same hands. She didn't wear her rank like a threat. She wore it like a responsibility. Her eyes went to Lena first, not scanning, not assessing, just seeing. Then to Ethan. "Cole," she said quietly. Ethan stood just enough to respect her presence without making Lena feel like things were escalating. Hayes spoke in a low voice. "I pulled the closed report," she said. "It's worse than I thought." Ethan's expression didn't change. "How?" Hayes exhaled through her nose, controlled. "No photographs, no medical follow-up, no direct interview notes. It reads like someone accepted a Guardian narrative and closed it to clear a backlog." Ethan felt his stomach harden. "What does it say?" Hayes kept it brief. "Accidental injury, child clumsy, Guardian cooperative. It's all vague. It's built to disappear." Lena's head lifted at the tone, and Hayes immediately softened her voice so the child wouldn't feel like the subject of a war. Hayes crouched slightly. "Hi, Lena," Hayes said gently. "I'm Captain Hayes. I'm here to make sure you stay safe, okay?" Lena stared at her, cautious. Shadow's eyes tracked Hayes, then flicked to Ethan. Ethan gave a small nod. Hayes read it and understood. She didn't move closer. She didn't force comfort. She shifted back toward Ethan and kept her voice low again. "We have enough now for a clean intervention," Hayes said. "We do it by the book. Medical documentation, recorded summary, then lawful entry. We do not wing this." Ethan nodded. "Agreed." Hayes's gaze sharpened. "And Ethan, this isn't just the Guardian," she said. "That report being closed that fast means something. Either incompetence or pressure." Ethan's voice stayed steady. "Then we do this so clean they can't bury it." Hayes nodded once. "Exactly." She straightened and took one last look at Lena. "You've done something brave today," Hayes said gently. "Not loud brave, quiet brave, the hardest kind." Lena's lips trembled. "I just didn't want to hurt anymore." Hayes's eyes softened. "That's reason enough." Hayes stepped back toward Ethan. "We're moving to the next phase," she said. "I'm coordinating lawful entry now. You and Lucas stay with Lena. Shadow stays with Lena. No separation unless she asks." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Understood?" Hayes turned, paused, and looked Ethan in the eyes. "This is the part where people try to rush you," she said. Ethan's face stayed calm. "I won't rush." Hayes nodded and left. Hours passed in quiet procedures that didn't feel like rescue to anyone outside the process. Paperwork, phone calls, confirmations, timestamps. Ethan stayed in the exam room with Lena while Lucas rotated in and out, bringing warm water, keeping the tone light when he could. At one point, Lucas held up a vending machine granola bar like it was a trophy. "Okay, listen," Lucas said, mock serious. "This thing is either going to taste like cardboard or like sadness. Place your bets." Lena stared at him for a second. Then, almost against her will, a small laugh escaped her. It was quick, surprised, like her body hadn't meant to do it. Lucas grinned like he'd just won something. "See? That's the sound of victory." Ethan watched Lena's face in that moment, how laughter looked unfamiliar on her, how it also looked like proof she was still a child under all the fear. Shadow remained beside her like gravity. When Lena's hands trembled, she found his fur. When her eyes darted toward the door, Shadow's ears adjusted, mapping sound and threat like a quiet radar. By evening, Hayes returned. Her face didn't show triumph. It showed resolve. "We're green," she said to Ethan. "Lawful entry is set. We're going to the residence. Lena stays here. She does not go anywhere near that house." Lena's shoulders tensed at the word house. Ethan stepped closer, not touching, just present. "You're staying here," Ethan told her gently. "You're safe here. Captain Hayes and the department are handling the house." Lena's voice shook. What if she says I lied?" Ethan answered immediately. "Then she'll have to explain the bruises," he said, "and the medical report, and the evidence we find." Lena's eyes filled. "And what if she still wins?" Ethan lowered his voice. "Then I keep fighting," he said. "I don't stop because it's hard." Lena stared at him. "People always stop," she whispered. Ethan shook his head once. "Not me." Shadow pressed closer to her prosthetic side, warmth and weight without pressure. Hayes looked at Ethan. "Cole," she said, "you're with me." Ethan nodded. He turned to Lucas. "Stay with Lena," Ethan said. "Keep it calm. Keep it normal. Call me if anything shifts." Lucas's grin faded into seriousness. "You got it." Ethan glanced at Shadow. "Stay," he said quietly. Shadow didn't move, not because he couldn't follow Ethan. Because Ethan's priority wasn't a house or an arrest. It was Lena. The residence was on the edge of town, where streetlights were sparse and the world felt emptier. A low house, ordinary siding, ordinary driveway. Ordinary was always the most dangerous camouflage. Hayes stood outside with a small department team, faces Ethan recognized but didn't name, because names weren't the point. The point was legality. The point was procedure. The point was making sure that no one could later claim this was personal. Hayes spoke quietly. "We do not create drama," she said. "We document everything. We photograph everything. We move clean. Anyone tries to obstruct, we treat it as obstruction, not a debate." Ethan's hands stayed relaxed at his sides. His mind was sharp and still. The door opened after the knock. A woman stood there, tall, tight posture, hair pulled back too hard, face pinched in irritation that tried to become innocence. Her eyes flicked over uniforms, over Ethan's calm, over Hayes's rank. "What is this?" she demanded. Hayes didn't argue. "Ma'am," Hayes said, voice steady, "we have legal authority to enter and investigate. Step aside." The woman's expression shifted, shock, then offense, then a flash of calculation. "You can't just," Hayes repeated, calmer. "Step aside." The woman hesitated, then moved. The house smelled like old air, stale perfume trying to mask something sour underneath. Ethan's eyes tracked details as they moved. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just reality. A living room with framed photos carefully placed. Smiling adults, holiday scenes, the performance of normal. Hayes didn't linger there. She went where truth lived. The kitchen, the pantry door had a lock, not a child safety latch. A lock. Hayes' face didn't change, but Ethan saw her eyes tighten. A laminated chart hung on the refrigerator. Neat handwriting, dates, measurements, check marks, food rationed like a controlled substance. Days circled, blank spaces where a child had been made to disappear behind discipline. Ethan felt his stomach turn cold. Photographs were taken, timestamps noted. Then the hallway, a door at the end, a lock on the outside. Ethan's jaw tightened. Hayes' voice stayed controlled. "Document, then open." The door swung inward. The room was small, bare. A thin mattress on the floor with no sheets. A single bulb overhead, switch outside. A cardboard box with clothes folded like someone had been taught to keep their existence compact. No toys, no books, no signs of a child's life beyond survival. "This isn't neglect," she said. Ethan's tone was flat, precise. "It's containment." More photographs, more notes. The woman's voice shrieked from behind them. "She's a liar. She's dramatic. She makes things up." Hayes didn't engage. She stepped back into the hall, eyes cold and steady. "Ma'am," Hayes said, "you are being detained pending charges related to child endangerment and unlawful confinement." The woman's face twisted. "You can't. She's mine." "Not anymore," Hayes said. The cuffs clicked closed, not triumphantly, just inevitably. Ethan watched the woman's eyes dart around the house, searching for someone to save her. No one did, because the evidence did what words couldn't. It spoke, loudly. Back at the clinic, Lena was still awake. Lucas sat in the chair beside her, arms folded like a human shield in a uniform. Shadow lay beside the exam table, chin near Lena's knee. Lena's eyes snapped to the door when Ethan returned. She stood too fast, pain cutting across her face. Ethan moved instantly, steadying her elbow. "Easy," he said. Lena's voice shook. Did you go there?" Ethan kept his tone gentle. "Yes." Lena's fingers went into his sleeve, gripping like she was anchoring herself to reality. "What happened?" Ethan didn't describe the room. He didn't put those images in her head. He gave her what she needed. "We found proof," he said. "Real proof. And Captain Hayes took action." Lena's eyes widened. She's mad." Ethan nodded once. "She will be," he said, "but she can't touch you." Lena's breath hitched. Am I safe?" Ethan met her gaze, steady. "Tonight? Yes," he said. "And tomorrow we keep making choices that keep you safe again." Lena's mouth trembled. Then she did something small and enormous. She leaned down and wrapped both arms around Shadow's neck. Shadow didn't squirm, didn't crowd her. He just accepted it with the calm patience of a dog who understood what it meant to be chosen as someone's safety. Ethan watched Lena's shoulders shake once. A single tear fell, then another, and for the first time she didn't hide them, because the room didn't punish her for being human. Hayes stepped in behind Ethan, voice low. "We're not done," she said. Ethan nodded without looking away from Lena. "I know." Hayes' eyes moved to Lena, softening again. "But we're past the point where anyone can pretend," Hayes said. Lena looked up. "Do I have to go back?" she whispered. Hayes answered carefully. "No," Hayes said, "not tonight, and we're going to fight very hard to make sure it's not ever." Ethan felt the weight of that promise settle in his bones. Promises weren't speeches, they were obligations, and he was already paying. Night didn't bring rest. It brought waiting. The clinic lights dimmed into a softer glow that suggested sleep without guaranteeing it. Monitors hummed in distant rooms. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled, wheels tapping out a rhythm that Lena's nerves tried to follow. She lay on the exam table, fully dressed, backpack tucked tight against her chest like armor. Shadow lay beside her, his body stretched along the floor in a protective line, chin resting near her knee. Every time she shifted, he adjusted. Every time her breathing changed, his ears flicked. Ethan sat in the chair beside her, hands open on his knees, posture relaxed but alert. He hadn't left since returning from the house, not for coffee, not for food, not for sleep. Lena noticed. "Don't you have to go?" she asked quietly. Ethan shook his head once. "No." "But your job—" "This is my job right now," he said. Lena studied him, searching for the catch. Adults always had one. When she didn't find it, her shoulders sagged, the tension draining just enough for exhaustion to creep in. "Okay," she whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. Shadow shifted closer, the heat of him steady and grounding. Lena's fingers found his fur automatically, the way they always did when her thoughts became too loud. She slept. Not deeply, not peacefully, but she slept. Ethan watched her chest rise and fall, counting breaths without meaning to. He thought of Captain Hayes' voice, "We're not done," and of Dr. Moore's precise notes already shaping a reality that couldn't be erased by denial. This was the long part, the part that didn't make headlines, the part where systems decided whether to work or quietly fail again. Morning arrived without ceremony. Gray light filtered through the blinds. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and cold. Lena woke slowly, confusion crossing her face before memory returned. Her hand tightened in Shadow's fur. "He's still here," she murmured, half to herself. "So am I," Ethan said. Lena blinked, then nodded like she was filing that fact somewhere important. Captain Hayes arrived an hour later, folder tucked under her arm. She didn't look tired. She looked focused, the kind of focus that came from knowing the cost of mistakes. "Cole," she said quietly, "we're moving this forward today." Ethan stood, careful not to startle Lena. Hayes glanced at the child. "Good morning, Lena," she said gently. "I've got some information. Some of it might sound complicated. I want you to know something before I start." Lena looked at her warily. "You're not in trouble," Hayes said, "and nothing is happening without adults whose job it is to protect you." Lena nodded, fingers twisting in Shadow's fur. Hayes turned slightly to Ethan. "Emergency protective placement is in effect," she said. "The evidence is solid. The closed report is being reopened. There will be hearings. There will be people who push back. But she's not going back." Ethan felt the tightness in his chest loosen by a fraction. "What about today?" he asked. "Today," Hayes said, "we get her stabilized. Medical care, temporary placement discussions, and we prepare for court." Lena's eyes widened at the word court. "I don't have to talk in front of everyone, do I?" Hayes crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to Lena's level without crowding. "Not today," Hayes said, "and when you do speak, you won't be alone." Lena glanced at Ethan. Hayes followed her gaze. "Officer Cole will be there," Hayes said. "So will Shadow, if allowed." Lena's shoulders relaxed a little. The days that followed blurred into a careful sequence. Medical appointments where Dr. Moore adjusted and documented, speaking in calm, clear language that turned pain into something measurable, and therefore treatable. Meetings where Ethan sat beside Lena while adults discussed timelines and procedures as if they were assembling a bridge piece by piece. Lena learned the strange relief of being believed, of watching adults write down her words instead of correcting them. Shadow attended every room he was allowed into. When he couldn't, Ethan stayed close enough that Lena could see him through glass or open doors. Separation was always explained, always temporary. Deputy Lucas Reed checked in whenever he could, bringing small distractions, stories about terrible cafeteria coffee, jokes about paperwork being the real villain. He never pushed, never pried. He understood that normalcy was medicine, too. At night, Lena stayed in a quiet temporary room arranged through the department. It wasn't home, but it wasn't a cage either. The door didn't lock from the outside. No one raised their voice. Shadow slept curled near the bed. Ethan took the chair again. "You don't have to do that," Lena said one night, watching him settle in. Ethan shrugged lightly. "I'm good here." She didn't argue. Weeks passed. The case moved the way serious cases moved, slow enough to feel dangerous, fast enough to hold momentum. Evidence spoke, documentation stacked. Dr. Moore's reports were clear and unforgiving. Captain Hayes kept pressure where it belonged, refusing to let the story shrink into misunderstanding. Lena began physical therapy with a properly fitted prosthetic. The first time she stood without wincing, she froze like the absence of pain was a trap. "It's okay," Ethan said softly. "You can put weight on it." She did, carefully. Then again. Her breath left her in a shaky laugh. "It doesn't hurt," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "It shouldn't." Shadow wagged once, slow and proud. On the morning of the hearing, Lena sat stiffly in a simple dress chosen for comfort, not presentation. Her hands shook as she laced her fingers together. Ethan knelt in front of her. "You don't have to perform," he said. "You just have to tell the truth when asked." Lena nodded, swallowing. "What if I say the wrong thing?" Ethan's voice was steady. "There's no wrong thing when you're honest." Shadow sat at her side, harness neat, posture calm. He looked at her like he always did, like she was the center of his map. The courtroom was quieter than Lena expected. No shouting, no drama, just wood, light, and the weight of attention. Judge Patricia Chen sat above it all with composed focus, eyes that saw details without spectacle. Lena stood beside Ethan, Shadow at her other side. She felt small, but she didn't feel alone. Judge Chen spoke gently. "Lena," she said, "you've heard the adults talk today. I want to ask you one thing, and you can take your time." Lena's heart pounded. She glanced up at Ethan, searching his face the way she always did before trusting the ground beneath her feet. Ethan didn't nod, didn't guide, he just stayed. Judge Chen leaned forward slightly. "Where do you feel safest?" The room held its breath. Lena looked at Shadow, at the steady rise and fall of his chest. Then at Ethan, at the calm certainty in his eyes, the promise that hadn't wavered once. "With him," she said, voice clear, "and Shadow." A murmur moved through the room. Judge Chen's expression softened without losing authority. "Mr. Cole," she said, "this is responsibility, not a favor. Do you understand that?" Ethan met her gaze. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you want it?" "I do." The gavel came down, not hard, not dramatic. Final, guardianship granted. Lena exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath for years. Life after wasn't a miracle. It was routine. Ethan's house was modest, quiet, and solid. Lena chose the room with morning light. They painted the walls together, Shadow supervised, tail thumping approval from the doorway. School mornings were awkward at first, therapy appointments tiring. Some nights, Lena woke from dreams that left her shaking. Ethan learned the rhythm of reassurance. Shadow learned it too, lifting his head before the sound left her throat. Slowly, the fear loosened its grip. One afternoon, Lena practiced walking along the path behind the house. No cane, just careful steps and Shadow matching her pace, shoulder aligned with her hip. Ethan followed a few steps back, close enough to catch her, far enough to let her try. She took one step, then another, then another. She laughed, full and unguarded. Shadow slowed, glanced back at Ethan as if to say, "See?" Ethan smiled, a rare, genuine expression that felt like a beginning. They weren't running anymore. They were home. Sometimes the biggest rescues didn't arrive with sirens or applause. Sometimes they arrived as a chair offered, a question answered, a decision made, and then honored every day after. They turned back toward the house together, unhurried. They weren't outrunning the past anymore. They were walking forward,